The Clark School of Engineering is home to 9 undergraduate majors, but most people only know about 7 of them. 2 of our majors, Fire Protection Engineering and Material Science and Engineering, are both the smallest and probably one of the most underrated engineering programs here at Maryland. But despite that, both have set the industry standard and have emerged as academic leaders within their respective disciplines. Today, we'll hear from 2 longtime faculty members about what these departments actually study, why students should seriously consider these fields, and we'll learn a little bit more about what these unsung fields of the Clark School do in our community. I'm Sebastian Chyon, and this is ET. As the competition for admission and careers increase each year, prospective students historically choose programs under the notion that the bigger the program, the greater the outcome. But that isn't always the case. Here in the Clark School of Engineering, 8 departments house 9 majors, but 2 of these departments are often overlooked due to their size and nature. The departments of Fire Protection Engineering and Material Science and Engineering have 2 of the smallest enrollments despite offering various degree programs and conducting industry-shaping research. My guests today to talk about each of these programs and why our students should give these majors serious consideration are Dr. Jim Milkey, who is a professor and department chair for the Fire Protection Engineering. Dr. Milkey, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me this afternoon.
Also with me is Dr. John Cummings, associate professor and undergraduate advisor for the Department of Material Science and Engineering. Dr. Cummings, welcome.
Great. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
So give us an introduction to your departments. How were your departments started? What do your faculty and students do both in and out of the classroom?
Fire Protection Engineering was started in 1956 here at the University of Maryland. The program was started largely as a result of lobbying by the Maryland Fire Service at the time, and for a few years before that, actually, seeking a technically based education program in the area of fire safety. There was one such program in the country at that time at the Illinois Institute of Technology. So this would have put then a similar program was the intent in Maryland. Today, the University of Maryland has the only ABET accredited fire protection engineering program in the United States. And given that there are few ABET accredited programs in any major outside the United States, we end up being the only accredited fire protection engineering program in the world. I'll talk more about the program in general, but in a sentence, the fire protection engineering program seeks to give students a broad background in the field of fire protection engineering so that they can enter into a variety of different career paths. Outside of the classroom, our faculty and students get involved in research activities, a broad range of research activities that we'll talk about a little further. There are an array of student activities that our students certainly get involved in and interact with faculty outside of the classroom. And then the faculty are all involved in some level of professional committees or standards committees that operate throughout the country.
Yeah, so I'll give an overview of material science and engineering. We kind of have this funny name. It's material science and engineering. And the reason why is because our discipline is really closely related to the basic sciences of chemistry and physics. And, in a nutshell, in all of engineering, like engineers make things, right? Like we make useful technology for health and safety and information management and storage. But things are made of stuff. And in material science and engineering, we make the stuff. So often if you look at new technology, there's some new material, whether it be batteries or photovoltaics, or even aircraft, where there's a new material that has some superlative properties, something that's extremely lightweight or has a very high electrical conductivity that enables that new technology. And so that's what our discipline is about. And if I look back at the history, we started actually in the chemical engineering department back in the 50s as some classes. This is before my time here. In the 80s, it started as a program, an engineering science program, and then together with the nuclear engineering program, we separated out from chemical engineering in the late 90s as the materials and nuclear engineering program. And then in the early 2000s, I think around 2003, nuclear engineering separated out and we became just materials engineering. And the traditional name for our department in most universities is materials science and engineering. And that's been our name here since 2003. We've grown a lot throughout that history, and especially for the latter part of the history, since in just a few short years from 2008 to 2015 or so, our undergraduate enrollment tripled in our program, and I think this reflects just the need of a lot of different engineering technologies to have new materials, and there's a lot of interest in these type of applications from students and this type of discipline. And so in our program, again, the students learn about the basics of science, of chemistry and physics, and we're kind of heavy in that compared to other engineering disciplines. But there's also a lot of really, applied sciences as well in our department in terms of, battery technologies, information technologies, computer chips. So there's a lot of different technological areas which can be impacted by new materials. And students will make new materials, try to figure out their structure and properties, and try to use that information to predict, the existence of new materials or to combine new materials to get new properties, always with that goal of really an impact on society and through technology.
So, Dr. Mielke, many students have the perception that fire protection engineering is a field with only so many paths after graduation. What do you think about this, and why should students care more about this field?
I'll say that at least initially, the career paths available to fire protection engineers are similar to most other engineering majors, so they're really not significantly different. That our graduates go on to work as consulting engineers, as part of a corporate staff with government agencies. So very, very typical set of employers that other engineers have, or most other engineering disciplines have. I think the perception that it's a limited field or there aren't many career paths available, there isn't much growth potential available through the career is largely a lack of understanding what fire protection engineers do. I think that, or at least that's what I consider it to be. And this is a challenge that we've had in the department essentially ever since I was an undergrad in the program way back when, that trying to understand and explain what I was seeking to do as a fire protection engineer would always get resulted in somebody giving me a strange look and what is that and what are you doing? And I think our students still have to answer that question today even. So our students are going to be engineers, and we're going to look at fire safety problems, fire safety issues that is facing corporate America, that is facing the development of a new facility, a new complex, that a government agency is having to think about for their facilities, or in terms of setting up regulations that are fire safety related. So our graduates get involved in design, get involved in research, get involved in forensic analyses, get involved in product development, where that product might be a new fire protection product, a new smoke detector, a new sprinkler type of device, or there are cases that will interact with other engineers to look at the fire safety of that particular product. So as Dr. Cummings was talking about new materials, a fire protection engineer might get in the lab and look at the flammability of that material, for example, and explore what the type of heat exposure would be needed to cause that material to ignite and be problematic then, of course. So I think that largely the sense that it's a very narrow field without much growth potential is due principally simply that people don't understand what it is, what the field is, and what the field has available to it.
To follow up on that, earlier you talked about the ABET accreditation, which many here at the university see it as one of the, perhaps the most competitive advantage that the Department of Fire Protection Engineering really holds. And despite this, some undergraduate students and people in the undergraduate community view this as a limiter almost, and explain to them why people who have this view it's actually a benefit.
Being unique, being the only program in the world with an undergraduate program accredited by ABET, means that FPE employers basically have one place to go to seek someone with an undergrad degree in the field, so that our graduates are routinely in very, very high demand year in, year out. Good economic times, not so good economic times. Fires are happening independent of what the stock market's doing, independent of the business conditions, so that our graduates are always in high demand. So there is that piece, and as I talk about our graduates being in high demand, the employers typically have a wide range of internships available for our current students to get them involved with the company potentially, and part of it's self-serving for the company to try and attract that student to come work for them once they become a graduate. But otherwise, there are tremendous opportunities for internships for the students also among, again, corporate America, among consulting companies, among government agencies, the whole array of people that hire FPEs. The other item I'll mention, just to talk a little bit about the benefit of being unique, and I prefer the word unique as opposed to being quirky or different. So we're unique, and that has benefits also in terms of we're one of few academic institutions that do fire research in the country. So that if corporate America, if a government agency has a fire-related problem that they need research on, they're coming to us to get that research done. So we get tremendous opportunities, a wide array of opportunities where our expertise is sought, and that it provides great opportunities for students to hear what the current issues are, to be involved in research, and bottom line, to make a difference to that corporate American company looking to get some research done on a particular topic, or the government agency looking to get some research done. And we're doing a lot of that high-profile fire research that's being done in the country.
So, Dr. Cummings, unlike FPE, accredited undergraduate programs for material science and engineering exist at other competitive universities. So why should students looking at multiple MSE programs choose the University of Maryland over schools like UCLA or even our neighbors in Pennsylvania at Penn State?
That's a very good question. So we have a close relationship with other programs, other universities. And in fact, just a year or two ago, we hosted the University Materials Council, where all the department chairs from all the other universities came to College Park and held their meeting here. And we got great feedback that they were really impressed with our program here. And I have to say, one of the things that has us well positioned in College Park is that a lot of the institutions where material science is done really at a very high level in the national labs are right nearby. The Army Research Lab is here in Adelphi, Maryland. Navy Research Lab is right here in DC. And NIST. NIST is a huge producer of new measurement capabilities for characterizing materials and new synthesis techniques for making high performance materials. And they're well connected with industry. Industry comes to NIST when they have these type of questions they need to solve. And sometimes they solve them in open ways and sometimes they solve them under contract. But we have that right here, right next to campus. And we have our program structured so that students can easily have internship opportunities during their undergrad. One of my former advisees actually works at the U.S. Patent and Trade Office, USPTO, here in DC. So there's a lot of opportunities in in this region, because of the government and the national labs nearby, that give some unique opportunities compared to other departments. I'm also going to answer that question another way, which is sometimes students ask this question of themselves, should I go to a big school, or, do I want to be a big fish in a small pond, or something like that? There's different ways of phrasing the question. And I think that, the big ponds have a lot of opportunities, and we have that here because of our proximity, but we're also a small department in terms of, our typical class size is now around 25 or 30 students, which is a good size. So that will be going through each year of undergraduate. So we're a good size in terms of, having a good ratio with faculty, so you can get a lot of that close personal contact. And I think really the way to think of this, do I want to be, in a small pond as a big fish, or do I want to be in a big pond with a lot of opportunities? I think the best, if you can find it, is actually to be in a growing pond, right? Because then you can grow with the pond, and you can have a career with expanding opportunities. You sort of get in at the ground level, so to speak. And our department has been going through a growth phase over the past 10 years, and I think will continue over the coming 10 years. And so I think for that reason, if we look at our growth metrics, we're highly competitive with other departments in our field.
I want to transition a little bit and talk a little bit about research, because both of you have touched upon it in previously. Research is something that is a strong hallmark of not just the University of Maryland, but also here in the School of Engineering. Research is a competitive advantage that every department, regardless of size, has stayed the course in previous years and as we move forward, regardless of conditions with the pandemic, or even in economic climates. Research here in the School of Engineering has stayed the course. And so, Dr. Cummings, what kinds of applied research have you done or has taken place in your department that prospective students may not commonly associate with material science and engineering?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've already talked about the traditional material science topics. Usually when you think of material science, you think of metallurgy, like steels and strength of metals and things like that. And I've mentioned some of the other topics which are all throughout MSE now, like battery materials or semiconductors, information technology materials. These are big hot topics in material science right now. But there's also some new topics which we're really getting into in our department. One is a project that I'm working on recently in next generation desalination membranes, where we are trying to engineer nanopores out of nanotubes, carbon nanotubes and other nanochannels, to try to exclude ions and to make desalination membranes for creating fresh water out of salt water. And another area which people don't often associate with the material science and engineering, but is really big in our department, is art preservation. There have been a few projects which have looked at taking artifacts from archaeology or from the art world and trying to come up with new ways of restoring or preserving those artifacts using material science to alter the surface of an artwork in ways that preserve it without altering the experience, in a museum or something like that. So there are a lot of different areas that we've had, and I think that sometimes the students come up with new ideas, and so it's really exciting. For example, during our senior capstone project, to see some of the ideas that the students come up with.
Dr. Mielke, how has the research in FPE benefited other engineering disciplines and the overall community?
Hi, Sebastian. That's a good question. A lot of fire protection engineering research is multidisciplinary or is working with products from other engineers, again, to find ways that those products can be introduced or utilized in a safe manner. The list of projects that we get involved in this area the list of projects that we get involved in this area basically occupy a long list that we get involved in hazards associated with lithium-ion batteries that are well known, and we see lots of cases of fires starting with lithium-ion batteries, and could be with electric vehicles or laptops or whatever, and just finding what are the characteristics of the batteries at which point, if there is a battery and it's exposed to a fire, at what point does it go critical and start acting like a flare, basically, that becomes important in a post-crash situation, perhaps for electric vehicle. We get involved in flammable refrigerants. So there's a new generation of refrigerants that's being proposed. These refrigerants are environmentally more friendly than the previous generation, but the difficulty is that these refrigerants are now flammable. So now that as there's a leak in the refrigerant in the refrigerator, now there's a significant problem potentially in a home. Get involved in making aircraft safer, a project that I had involvement in providing advanced fire detection for cargo spaces where the pilots can't go back and see what's going on if the dashboard lights up with a smoke detector alarm. Where the experience in the industry is that they have many, many false alarms with significant cost if they have to land because there's a false alarm. So getting involved in areas like that. Outside of the product area, I can say we've gotten involved in research over the last about half dozen years or so now, looking at wildfires, very much in the news, looking at trying to estimate the growth of a wildfire, predict where it's going to go based on fuel characteristics, wind, topography, the array of factors that affect where wildfire is going to go, understanding how that wildfire spreads. So most wildfires spread not just because the flame front just slowly moves across the field or across trees, but because brands are generated. Little pieces of twigs are broken off, and they'll go downwind, quarter mile, half a mile, and start a fire somewhere downwind. So we're doing research to try and understand how those brands get released from a twig. A basic engineering problem. It's like a beam, right? Having a beam. When does the end of the beam break off? After it burns a little bit. And then trying to understand the aerodynamics of that brand and where it's going to land. And also, we get involved in some research that's related to other areas of our field, involving ergonomics and looking at people and how people respond to fire. So we get involved in that side of the research as well, with some projects that have looked at. So as you get a message in your phone of an alert, what should that message say? And what should the order of the statements be for best understanding by the public of what they need to do now at this point? And just very recently have looked at now the evacuation of communities and what's it take to evacuate a community? How much time do people need to evacuate? And that's going to depend upon whether it's an adult couple with a cat that has to go into a car, or the kids at school down the road. Do you have livestock that you've got to save? All these kind of things. So we're trying to gather information to understand how long it takes to evacuate a community.
Well, that's a great point that both of you make about research. I think many of our prospective students and even some of our current students really aren't aware of the applications of some of the research that both these departments are doing. So I want to transition now to talk about the program itself. Around this time of the year, many students around the country and even in other countries are completing their college applications, and a big part of the application is which program the students are most interested in. So for MSc, Dr. Cummings, why might a student who is interested in chemistry or even chemical engineering or any other field, such as even physics or mathematics, for example, why might material science and engineering be a good fit for them?
That's a very good question. And we sort of occupy this gap, sometimes chasm, if you will, between basic sciences and applied sciences. And we really sort of straddle it. I mean, there are basic science questions in material science. For instance, is there a material that's harder than diamond? right? That's not a chemistry question. That's not a physics question. It's a real materials, basic science question. And it's also not applied science. I mean, there's a lot of useful things you could do if you had a material that was harder than diamond, but it's really a fundamental science question. And so we straddle that gap between fundamental science, fundamental, like physics and chemistry, which are obviously part of our discipline, and then the applied sciences, which is, how do I make a better performing aircraft or things like that? And there's definitely materials questions there as well. That's more the materials engineering side, where we're looking at the performance of materials. So if somebody who's interested in chemistry, is thinking about an engineering discipline, they might actually think about chemical engineering. But one of the things that is sort of a common experience that we've had for people who switch from chemical engineering to materials science and engineering is they feel like there's actually more chemistry in our program. And I think the reason for that is that often when people talk about chemistry or they think about chemistry, they think about the chemistry of things that they can interact with, of applied materials, which are mostly solids. And in chemical engineering, you're dealing more with gas phase and liquid phase reactions, and you're thinking more about how do I control that reaction and optimize it. It's a very important discipline for chemical manufacturing, for drug manufacturing and things like that. But when you talk about making new materials, making new chemical compounds or new materials that are going to do something that's going to help, with society or technology, usually we're talking about solids, and the properties of the solids is what matters. And that's what we deal with in material science and engineering, and not so much in either chemistry or chemical engineering. And so that ability to use the basic science to have a real impact, I think, is what excites our students and gives them a lot of passion. And it's that unique combination, which I think that we have that other engineering programs don't have as much.
So, Dr. Mielke, for prospective students who are interested in maybe civil or even mechanical engineering, why should they seriously consider FPE?
I can answer that question in a couple different ways, I think. Interesting question, a question we get quite a bit, actually, that the students that are interested in our program quite often are also thinking about civil or mechanical engineering, probably the two most popular other engineering disciplines they're considering. The fire protection engineering program, first of all, is going to be built on the same principles as civil and mechanical engineering. So the first 2 years of studying in engineering school are going to be virtually identical in fire protection, civil, mechanical engineering. So we have very much the same starting point, the same areas of engineering and applied science are going to get involved in each of those disciplines. Fire protection engineering will apply those principles then to a focused set of issues involving conditions produced by fires and explosions. Looking at the fluid mechanics and heat transfer and combustion principles for the purpose of how does a fire start, how does it grow, where does the smoke go, it would be, again, a focused set of issues we're going to get involved in. And then, again, providing protection from those conditions is part of what we get involved in. The other piece as to why, the case I would make to a point that Dr. Cummings made a little bit ago, in a small department, we're that proverbial small pond. So in a small department, in either of our small departments, there's a greater opportunity for students, I think, to get individual attention. With due respect to my colleagues in the big departments that have, in the one case, in mechanical engineering has almost 10 times the number of students that we do in fire or material science and engineering, that we're able to give much more one-on-one attention to the students in and out of the classes. So if a student wants a particular internship, they're going to have an easier access to talk to faculty, to talk to our advising staff about what internships are available, what experiences are possible, what scholarships are available. How do I get involved in research in the department with the faculty in the department? So I think that small community atmosphere where as you come into the room and everybody knows you by name, as opposed to, oh yeah, you're that person sits over there in the second row every day. It's a very different thing and much more personable, much more enjoyable atmosphere, I think.
I'm glad that you talked about the size of the department, as well as some of the hallmarks of both of these departments. And so my next question is actually for both of you. And a common misconception about both FPE and MSE on campus is that since both of these departments are relatively small compared to our counterparts in we talked about mechanical, civil, aerospace, even in bioengineering, on the other side of the Clark School. The opportunities to have a full engineering education may be limited. That seems to be a common perception from recent polling that we've done from prospective students and even some of our current students. So what do you both say to this? And, why are some of these individuals wrong?
Yeah, I can start. Full engineering education. So in MSE, you see a lot of different applications and a lot of different technology areas, and it really is a rich experience. I think. There's in a larger department, you might feel like, oh, maybe there's more opportunities, but you have to also think about the opportunities per capita, right? MSE has a lot of opportunities to get involved with research, to get involved. I'm both with applied research and basic research because we do both in the department, and also to get involved with internships, both at national labs and commercial sector internships, which are abundant in this region. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities to have this sort of full engineering experience. And not only are there a lot of them, I think there's a good opportunity. There's a good chance to take advantage of those opportunities, given our smaller department size. There's, these abilities to have that face time with faculty. To take one specific example, there's a summer undergraduate research fellowship, which, unfortunately they had to put on hold for the 2020 summer year. But this is offered out of NIST, a National Institute for Standards and Technology in Gaithersburg, and it'll be back up and running soon. And our department is overrepresented in that program. We have a lot of students going into that, getting involved with materials science and engineering, materials research opportunities at NIST. In fact, a lot of the research projects at NIST are materials research projects. And so that there's some good opportunities there, and it really gives you a rich experience. And, intellectually, I think that there's, no loss of scope in thinking of, material science compared to other disciplines in terms of the types of technologies that you learn about. There's a lot of possible applications out there.
I'll just add a little bit on what John has just said. In many of the comments he provided about material science, I think are true in fire protection engineering as well. In fire protection engineering, our students have the same broad range of opportunities as the students in the big majors, we'll call them. So our students can do research in the department. They can do study abroad. There are internship possibilities. All of that is present in our small department. Those same opportunities are there. Same opportunities to get involved in the student organizations in our departments are there as well. I spoke previously about the greater opportunity for a one-on-one interaction on that per capita basis that was mentioned before. The one other thing I should add that for our small department that we have, and come back to the uniqueness piece that we started this out on, because of our uniqueness in fire protection engineering, we get tremendous support from the corporations and the potential employers. And that support comes in the form of supporting our students through scholarships. That we have a tremendous amount of scholarships in the department to support our students. And I think per capita, our scholarship support is greater than what we get, what mechanical engineering gets, what civil engineering gets as examples, because There are many schools that get a mechanical engineering degree, but there's only one school to get a fire protection engineering degree. So the employers are very strong in supporting our department, both morally and also financially, to help our students.
We received some messages from you, our listeners, about questions that you may have or questions that you would like to see answered here on the show. The first one here is about material science and engineering. Dr. Cummings, we received a message from a prospective student that is interested in your program. She says that MSE sounds like a great field to explore in college and in my future career, but it seems very research heavy. Would a degree in MSE lead to a mostly research or lab-based career?
That's a very good question. I would say, first off, that's being research heavy is not necessarily a bad thing. We do have a lot of our graduates from our program, alumni, going on to graduate school. So if you look in the School of Engineering here in College Park, we have the highest fraction that do go on to pursue their PhD. But it's not the only thing. And, some people go on to not research-based careers, both from the bachelorate and from the PhD. So they might do more research immediately after finishing here, but then ultimately after they get their PhD, they might go into a production job. So I have some alumni who work, for example, at Intel, which everyone knows makes computer chips, and then also Keysight Technologies, which people may not know, but they house the Hewlett-Packard's, the famous Hewlett-Packard's Physical Science Lab, which makes radio frequency chips for companies like Agilent and Verizon and AT&T that need to characterize radio devices for telecommunications. And they're in a production environment with the rewards associated with being close to a revenue stream. And so you can make a lot of money in such an environment. And it's not necessarily lab-based. You really get some hands-on experience and you get involved in these customer relationship issues. But also as I mentioned previously, one of my former advisees works at the U.S. PTO, Patent Trade Office. He's a patent reviewer, and that's a very rewarding career track as well. And the reason why is because MSE touches so many different technologies that you really get this broad expertise that allows you to synthesize and evaluate new technologies quite easily. There's other opportunities. So we have some alumni who are analysts, some alumni who are working in production environments, in coatings industries, paints and other types of coatings and textile industries, and some alumni who are working in production and battery industries as well. And then there's also always, I would say throughout the Clark School, there's always opportunities in entrepreneurship. And I think even more so in material science. I don't know, I might be biased, but because it touches so many different technology areas, and often a materials innovation can lead so directly to a technology innovation that if you have that IP, it can be very easy to start a company. So I think that, probably about half of the people who come through our program do end up in research heavy or lab heavy career paths. But I'd say that a good 50%, maybe or more, end up more in the production or, commercial sectors rather than doing, basic lab research.
We also got a voicemail from a parent of a prospective student, and the audio was a little fuzzy, so I'll read out the transcription of it. It reads, "My son is really interested in fire protection engineering, but one thing we are also considering is job security. I'm worried that he may not have a job or even a secured career in a field of engineering that seems a bit narrow. Dr. Mielke, what's your response to this? This seems to be a question that is on many prospective students' minds. A recent poll found that over 70% of prospective students' primary concern was being able to have a secured career after their time in undergrad. And I think a lot of it has been fueled by recent events that we've seen around the country, with many of even the most stable industries facing some hardship. So what do you say to this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very relevant question in any year, let alone this year. So in recent years, I will say that there, again, because of the limited number of schools that offer fire protection engineering programs, we're the only one with the undergrad degree. There are 2 other schools besides ourselves that offer graduate degrees, but still, that's only 3 universities in the U.S. that are producing fire protection engineering graduates at any level. That there are still, from what we hear from employers about openings and so on, about 3 openings for every new FPE graduate that we have coming out at the University of Maryland. So 3 to 1. Now, and again, it's not completely immune from business downturns, so that 3 to 1 ratio might go down a bit. I will say that our May grads, in the middle of the surges in the pandemic and so on, the May grads all had job offers, and they all kept those job offers. None of the job offers were rescinded. Some of them had some start dates delayed a little bit, so I don't want to give you too much of a sense that we're completely immune from this. But all the graduates found jobs. For the couple that were laid off, they very quickly found a new position. So there again, because there are these huge number of unfilled openings that sit throughout the country, throughout the world, for that matter, should someone want to go overseas. So that there absolutely are job opportunities available throughout the country. Here in the Mid-Atlantic region, every major consulting engineering company has an office near Washington, D.C. The government agencies are obviously in Washington, D.C. So for someone from the Mid-Atlantic area who wants to stay here, there are lots of jobs year in, year out. For those graduates who want to go to the West Coast, there are all sorts of job opportunities available year in, year out. The other comment that I'll make in this regard, I hear comments back from prospective students, from parents that again, it's this narrow field and there's no prospect for growth in the job. We hear that, but let me mention that we've had alumni go to very high places in government agencies, become the senior engineer of all disciplines. For some disciplines, like Naval Facilities Engineering Command, was one of our graduates. We've had graduates that have become vice presidents of Marriott and BP. So again, have been able to move up the ladder in industrial setting in corporate America. And many of our graduates have started their own consulting companies. And these companies then have flourished in many cases to large companies. That one of our graduates is the CEO of Jensen Hughes. That's a very, very large company. Has about 1,000 engineers altogether in several disciplines, not just fire protection. But there is absolutely growth potential up into management and administrative levels within government agencies, corporations, people starting their own companies.
So can I jump in, Sebastian, and give a perspective on MSE for this question too?
Of course.
So one of the things that you have to think about as an educator is your department serving your community, right? Is your program serving, say, the state of Maryland? And as part of that, we might need to think about how many fire protection engineers are needed in the state of Maryland, or how many material scientists or materials engineers. And I'm not going to name any names inside engineering, but I know that the law profession has been struggling with this. And there have been some famous cases, you can Google them, and news articles for law departments that have decided deliberately to downsize the number of students they admit each year because they think that there aren't going to be jobs for them in the future. There may be other similar cases for other science or engineering departments. And we go through this in MSE too. We think we ask the question, are we the right size? And if you look at the number of hires from the big engineering, they might say, oh, here's the number we need this year of mechanical engineers or electrical engineers or something like that. And if you look for the list, like, where's the materials, where's the MSE, where's the materials engineers? Like, it's not on the list, right? And so if you go from that perspective, yeah, we should fold up shop, right? But the truth is, if you look at our alumni and whether they're getting jobs, they're all getting jobs. They're getting jobs in different places, doing lots of different things, but they're all getting good jobs, high paying, doing things that they want to do, that they're passionate about. And so by that measure, the sky's the limit. We can keep growing. We haven't reached our right size yet. And I think it's similar with FPE.
Very, very true. Very true.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I would agree too. In my time here with the university, when I first came to the School of Engineering, specifically to FPE, I think it just blew my mind, honestly, that, these two departments, such as both of yours, offer all of these opportunity and all these experiences that, coming in from the outside, you wouldn't think that these exist. And you do make a good point, Dr. Cummings. We do have to see how we can, best serve our community with our students and with our graduates, and see how we can better improve on what's already been done, but also make an impact. I think that it's something that these two departments really do emphasize in the mission and the work that we do both in and outside of the classroom. So before we close, I want to give you both a chance to share with our listeners what you want them to take away from your departments and what makes them great.
Okay, I'll get started if you don't mind. So I'll say that the fire protection engineering field, again, it's a relatively small field. There are something on the order of 7,500 fire protection engineers altogether throughout the United States. So fairly small field. It's that small pond type of thing. It is absolutely that growing pond. And the fire protection engineering as an engineering discipline really came into its own and was then recognized by other professions not so many years ago, perhaps in the 1980s or so, compared to civil engineering, mechanical engineering that's been recognized as an engineering discipline for well over 100 years. So there are tremendous opportunities for the motivated individual. The sky's the limit, basically, on what you could get involved in. You can be involved in being a leader, being a thought leader in the field, being involved in the international community in the field. In my own case, I can recall just being out of school 5-6 years, and I was on a national committee looking at how we should test materials for flammability characteristics. And it was part of a committee, and I ended up getting into this argument with someone on the other side of the table with me about how this particular test should be run. So a little detailed kind of thing engineers get involved in. But I'm arguing with this person, and after we went back and forth a little bit, I recognized I was arguing with one of the gods in the field, somebody whose papers I had read for exams and so on. And here I have this opportunity to argue with this individual about a test method. I lost the argument as a young engineer, right? But having that opportunity is only going to be available in small fields like ours, where you get a chance to do this at a relatively early age or stage of your career and not have to wait until you're advanced degrees, advanced age, senior citizen sort before you get those sort of opportunities. So tremendous opportunities in our field. And I think that's for either of our fields, and we'd encourage the people to be open-minded and think about these small, unique departments.
Yeah, that's great, Jim. I agree, and I liked your little anecdote there. That I feel like that applies to MSE too, and I think that in MSE, like FPE, there really are lots of different and varied opportunities, and I think what that provides you when you're thinking about your career and the future. Maybe it's not a specific trajectory, like you just do this and then you get here, and then when you're there you do this and then you get there. Like some engineering disciplines, MSE is not like that. The opportunities are much more different from each other, which gives you your own opportunity to define it for yourself. If there's a particular aspect of particular technology that's more interesting to you, by all means you can do that. And when you are realizing your own passions in that way, and a lot of our students are very passionate, it gives you an ability to, I think, go to 11, work a little bit harder than the others, and really put a little bit more of yourself into it. And when you're working at that level, you can do well at anything. And so if you're finding something that you're passionate about and defining in a way that's really driving you, then you're excited. You bring your whole self to the job and your career and your education, and the sky is the limit. And you'll find those opportunities, even if they weren't on a specific pathway or road at the beginning.
I think our listeners gained a lot of insight from our conversation today, and thank you both for joining us. That's all the time we have for today. Tune in next month to hear about how FPE jobs have been operating throughout the pandemic and what the career field looks like as we enter the new year. We also want to hear from you. Tweet us at FPEUMD or send us an email at enfp@umd.edu. Thanks for listening.